play a game?
Why, yes, I believe we shall.
Oh, I got a live one here.
Getting geeky in Little Rock, it's Shane Plays Geek Talk, a journey into the things we love. I'm your host, Shane Stacks. Thanks so much for joining me. Whether you're listening over the air on, this should air June 8th at 1 p.m. Central on 101.1 FM The Answer, or online at 101.1fmtheanswer.com, or if you're listening by podcast or on Krypton Radio or on YouTube or any of the other ways that it goes out delayed after the main show on Saturdays at 1 p.m. Central. I'm just glad that you're here. I have a extremely cool guest that I can't wait to introduce to you. So I'm just going to jump right into that. And if we have any show notes or whatever that I need to get in the mix, I'll get that in later. This man is busier than a 52-armed octopus in I was trying to come up with some metaphor like busier than a one-legged man in a butt-kicking contest, but shove an octopus in there somewhere and it'll work. But I'm talking with, and this happened quick. I think a couple of days ago, I reached out to Mitch Breitweiser and Edwin Boyette, who are two incredibly hoopy fruits, and say, hey, could y'all introduce me to Doug TenNapel? I would love to talk with him, one, for his history in video games and whatnot, but two, his his Indiegogo went berserker. So I was like, I know there's a lot of interest in what he's doing. So with no further ado, on the, I would say on the lines, but you're on the Google Hangout, Doug, is Doug TenNapel. Doug, welcome to Shane Plays.
Hey, Shane, how you doing? And hello, The Answer audience. I'm a big fan of The Answer. I listened to that show back when I was in LA about 7 years ago. I was that network and all the Salem radio network. I'm a big fan of. Yeah,
Salem is actually, in its genre or category, whatever it is, it's the biggest in the country. I know they're the number one in Dallas and Fort Worth, which is a huge market. So
yeah, I love it. Even in LA, it's big because it's like, where else are you going to go? But I used to hang out. I hung out in Hugh Hewitt's studio for a while. I was a regular caller back.
That's excellent.
I'm a big fan.
Cool. Well, like I said, we were talking offline. I'm going to introduce you to our local Hugh Hewitt, who is Dave Ellswick. And in fact, I think we were talking about Godzilla off the air before we started recording. Godzilla with fire in his eyes. But anyway, and Godzuki. But I'll stop with all that.
That's the Saturday morning cartoon. That's trash. That thing is trash.
Yeah. You know, the new one that they did when the 1999 so-called Godzilla movie came out, the animated series of that's actually pretty good. Mark Pellegrini recommended that to me, and Tony Isabella recommended it to me. They're both huge Godzilla fans, and it's pretty good. You know, it's still not the Godzilla I want, but it's much better.
Writing. It could only be better than the movies that were coming out around then.
The Godzilla movie, and we're not here to talk Godzilla, but the show, the movie will have already opened by the time this airs. The Godzilla movie in 1999 is a great, just monster stomping around New York movie. Blockbuster, check your brain at the door, whatever. It's a terrible Godzilla movie. That's the way I look at it. So, but it's fun just for the ridiculousness of it. And the cartoon, the animated series, I actually recommend because it's more classic Godzilla. He has, oh my goodness, radioactive fire breath, and he fights other kaiju and stuff. So anyway, but yeah, Dave and I have tickets Thursday night to go see Godzilla King of the Monsters.
We will both have seen this movie multiple times by the time this airs, so we can pretend like we're already giving a review.
Let's just tell you, it was great. I loved the part.
Best picture of the year.
It's amazing.
Excited.
I love the part when Rodan did that thing, and then Godzilla kind of roared. That was amazing. Yeah.
It was kind of weird just to see Robert De Niro show up as a giant kaiju. That was strange.
But fitting. Strangely fitting. Yeah.
But fitting. He's kind of been getting bigger in his age.
And it was kind of cool because they did a little bit of fan service. Robert De Niro doing his Conway character from Goodfellas kicked over the Chrysler building and said, "It's kaiju, you idiots, not titans." And I love that part. Yeah, that was great.
Ghidorah took him out and destroyed him, and then there was a faint applause in the audience where I saw it. I thought it was strange, but I went with it.
Yeah, he popped out and he looked at Ghidorah and he said, "Are you looking at me?
Are you looking at me?
You must be looking at me." And then he tried to pick up a taxi and hit, but Ghidorah just took him out.
Yeah, he was looking at him with 6 eyes.
Yeah. He's giving him the baleful stare. Ghidorah is one of my favorite kaiju ever. I love that lightning, just amazing. So, anyway, prediction. Do you think Mothra is going to show up? Mothra.
Of course.
I hope so.
It has to be. This is like the remake of Destroy All Monsters.
It pretty much is.
Rodan. Yeah. They gave hints of it in King Kong that there were 17 kaiju. So there's the spider one. There's all those.
Oh, it's that.
One.
So we're going to get like Monster Island. See, I've been avoiding I watched the teaser trailer for movies and then I don't watch any other trailers. So Mothra is confirmed. I knew that it was Rodan.
Mothra's confirmed big time. And the little maggots too. The little
Mothra maggots.
Caterpillars. Yeah.
So is it going to be too culturally sensitive to have the little pygmy ladies singing that are like native singing Mothra? Yeah. Is that going to be?
We don't do that anymore.
Are we too woke to do that?
Since there's twins, it's Me Too.
There you go. Yeah, that's the thing these days. Even though we're getting all these beloved movies and everything, we have to put up with a little bit of woke, which kind of puts me to sleep. But anyway, moving on. Doug, so what we're here to talk about today is the main thing I want to do is help you promote your Indiegogo for the Earthworm Jim. Now, listen, folks, not a video game, although there's a video game coming too. It's an Earthworm Jim comic book, and it is blowing the doors off. I think it crossed 100,000 in the first day, right? It was something ridiculous.
Yeah, I was close to that, and we're at the time of this recording, it was 192,000, I think, in less than 2 weeks.
And your initial goal was 12,000.
Yeah.
Wow.
So now I have to make a book.
Yeah, the making of book, the making of the making of the making of.
Yeah, here's the cover of the making of. This is the sketch that I did for it, and then
I've seen the mock-up on the Indiegogo, and I like it a lot.
That's by the original Earthworm Jim cartridge artist, Mike Kell. She did all the packaging with the Jim with the blaster. He's doing the cover on the making of book. I'm going a deep dive into the history of Earthworm Jim, how I created him, how the team put the game together with interviews of the entire original 10-person Shiny team we met a few weeks ago, and I got to kind of give kind of a retrospective hindsight of what they thought of, like, well, what do you think now of what happened with the character? Because the success of that character just blew us all away.
What I want to know is whatever happened to the lost designs for his arch enemy who became his long lost beloved second cousin twice removed, Marsworm Tim. What happened to Marsworm Tim?
He got tied up in a big lawsuit along with Planarian Joe. Earthworm Kim, I believe, was made in China.
Yeah.
And we leveled them with a lawsuit.
Did you? Just scorched earth. Was it scorched earth?
Wow. Yeah, it was scorched earth. But I'm excited because this is something that I think your audience would be entertained by.
Oh, I guarantee they will. Yeah.
Is that I'm a conservative Christian, and
no,
I know, terrifying, right?
You want to know a secret? Me too. Every now and then I actually talk about God and Christ and sin on this show. That's not the main focus, but
it's our secret handshake.
Yeah. Yeah. Back in the day, honestly, they would draw half of an ichthus, the fish.
Yeah,
like you were there in the catacombs.
The other guy would come and draw the
second part. Yeah, and then that was how they. There was some.
We'll be back to that in a couple of years.
Yeah, probably, man. There's some great. Yeah, I like. And again, this is not the topic of today's show. People. I did some volunteer work for several years with Voice of the Martyrs, and a lot of people think that Christian persecution was like back in the Roman days, and there's more Christian persecution today than there ever has been.
I help fund that charity.
Yeah.
But one of this is what ties into the Indiegogo for Earthworm Jim.
Right.
One of the things that I'm looking for, I've done 18 graphic novels, worked on 10 video games, I've done 5 TV shows. And my career now, when I started seeing kind of the cultural backlash against conservatives, I thought it would be nice to get some kind of protection where I can still create the same kind of fun stuff I've been making for 30 years, which I have a broad audience. Everyone likes it. It's for everybody. But I just felt like nowadays, man, you say the wrong thing, do the wrong thing, and a big company gets pressured into dropping it.
Right.
So I thought I want to start my own independent comic line, and that's what I did last year with Bigfoot Bill. This year, Earthworm Jim is my second book, and I have about 2,000 to 3,000 backers who basically fund my income to do what I want to do. So now I kind of have this Teflon from culture where if they want to drop me, 3,300 people can drop me or whatever.
I've actually one time I lost a job over being very visible and outspoken in my faith. Now, the reasons they came up with were other stuff. And, it's partially up to the Christian, too, to be wise as serve, harmless as dove, wise as serve, because they don't hire me to be there and to be this, Apostle Paul running around.
Absolutely true.
So it's partially my fault. But the reasons they came up with were so ridiculous, So in the United States, the Western world, a lot of it is, it's not even necessarily illegal, but, it's in the workers' handbook, so we're going to have to let you go, Yeah,
they can choose when they want to bring the iron hand down. And we know how this works.
Right.
Everyone else can do whatever, say they can wear.
Right.
I worked at the studios, and a guy would come in wearing a T-shirt with a Bush T-shirt on, and the S was a swastika.
Of course.
You can get away with that all day.
Well, yeah, and I had a buddy at work. He's across the aisle from me in our cubicle farm, and we had very outspoken, we're Christians and this and that. And we weren't proselytizing people. We were just talking between ourselves. And we often talked about how every time an HR situation comes up, it's always from one side. And we're like, viewpoint discrimination goes both ways. So, but anyway, that does lead into, and I'm going to ask more about Earthworm Jim, and if I get a chance, I want to bring up Bigfoot Bill. However, you're a big GK Chesterton guy. Right in your bio, your Twitter bio says, Doug TenNapel is the creator of Earthworm Jim, The Neverhood, and Bigfoot Bill, author of 16 graphic novels, GK Chesterton groupie, He-Man/Man-He. So I think you're the first literal GK Chesterton groupie I've met. So I want to ask you a question. Now, I've read Orthodoxy. My main go-to for Christian stuff is Lewis. But I love some Chesterton, everything I've read about him. But here's my favorite quote of his. It says, "A small circle is quite as infinite as a large circle, but though it is quite as infinite, it is not so large. In the same way, the insane explanation is quite as complete as the sane one, but it is not so large. A bullet is quite as round as the world, but it is not the world. There is such a thing, such a strong thought, as a narrow universality. There is such a thing as a small and cramped eternity. You may see it in many modern religions." So that, I was like, wow. And G.K. Chesterton is known for his strong thinking, his ability to put things in words, and his debating. I mean, he would just go debate anybody, and he was a big, colorful character.
Yep.
Do you have a favorite Chesterton quote?
I like. That's all I do is quote Chesterton. But
And now that you're put on the spot, you're like,
I like the idea where he said, "Morality, like art, lies in drawing a line somewhere."
Mm-hmm.
Those kinds of twists, the way he twists words and uses them, though, you can study even your last quote on the circle your whole life.
Mm-hmm.
That's what I love about him. You mentioned Orthodox. That's probably my favorite book I've ever read.
Right.
I've read it just a ton.
You mentioned another thing. You said you've done 18 graphic novels, 10 video games. What TV shows have you been involved with?
The first one, of course, was Earthworm Jim, and then I made another show called Project Geeker for Sony Columbia TriStar. That was on CBS. I did, there's a show called Push Nevada that I worked on with Ben Affleck. That was live action on ABC. In the early 2000s, mid 2000s, I did Cat Scratch for Nickelodeon, is based on one of my graphic novels. Recently, I was the showrunner for the VeggieTales in the House for DreamWorks and Netflix. We redid the series.
That's so amazing. I had no idea you were doing all this stuff, man.
Yeah, Mike Nelson was a writer on it. Ethan Nicole was one of our.
Man, I'll do a show on VeggieTales, man. That's get the word out on that. We show that we let our.
Got an Emmy. We were the first Emmy nomination that VeggieTales ever got.
That's freaking. I had no idea. See, this is why I love doing these shows, because everyone is like Earthworm Jim, Doug TenNapel, but then you find out that most successful people that are in the public eye, I firmly believe the more and more that I work and get my hands in different things, and I'm not saying I'm successful, I'm just saying getting out there and getting in the mix and really trying to make stuff and not just wage slaving to get by, right? Yeah. And let me clarify that. There's nothing wrong with working 9 to 5 if your heart feels like that's where you need to be. I've never felt that. I've always wanted to go out and build my own stuff. So I've learned most people that are successful, you only see the tip of the iceberg, and they're usually successful and creative in multiple areas, right? Most famous or successful people are rarely one-trick ponies. So that's amazing. I have no idea. I'm gonna have to go.
That's how I've always just been kind of a buckshot approach. Is I just create and grind stuff out, and even on my books. Of those 18 graphic novels, I've sold 60% of them into Hollywood, the movie deals to all the studios.
Yeah. That's okay. Like my favorite, the Ed Wood movie is one of my favorite movies. And he's got the producers of his movie on the set, and like tombstones keep falling over. And they're like, should that happen? He's like, we'll fix it in post. And he just keeps running. So we'll fix it in post.
Okay, good. Thank you.
Yeah, of course. Well, here's my thought on it. And a lot of radio people don't agree with this, and that's fine, because there's a lot of people out there a lot more experience than I've got. I've been doing radio about 5 years and podcasts for about 5 years, but I've listened to a lot of talk radio my whole life as a junkie. Yeah, I engage more when a little bit of the warts show. It's like, oh, this is real. This isn't so hyper produced that it's, So anyway, one last question on Chesterton. After Orthodoxy, like, what would be your next recommended book to keep going with Chesterton?
I think his book of essays is probably a good jumping off point. What's Wrong with the World? In Defense of Sanity. Those are great little 3-pagers, 5-pagers. They're full of wisdom. They're full of humor. I mean, if you read Chesterton long enough, you will laugh. It isn't a bit of an acquired taste, because, especially if you're so accustomed to Lewis, who's very surgical.
Right. Well, no, I like both. I like Chesterton's bombastic. He's not a clown. He's almost like Winston Churchill, right? Yeah. He will blow your mind, but at the same time with humor and wit, and he'll just change on a dime. Like, you're not supposed to be like that. You're supposed to be erudite and scholarly and not cracking those jokes or whatever. So
I think he's one of the greatest as far as artistic writing goes. He's probably the greatest writer of the last century. And I'm a big fan of C.S. Lewis.
Yeah,
I put C.S. Lewis on the top shelf, but C.S. Lewis was enamored by poets, and I actually think Chesterton was doing more of what Lewis was trying to do.
Yeah. Well, that's really the reason that and I may have to edit some of this out for the radio show for time and leave it in the podcast version, but the reason I recommend, like, if anybody is either a new Christian or if they just want to, what is Christianity all about? I think it's a bunch of hooey, but I want to know what it's all about. I recommend Mere Christianity. Yeah. If I think that they can, and I don't mean this wrong, some people are not ready right out the gate for like Chesterton, because but if I think it'll be like Chesterton, and then, for Christians, I recommend Pilgrim's Progress. And then there's another book out there by, man, I can't remember his name off the top of my head. He's written 8 million Christian books, but it's called Soul Survivor, How My Soul Survived the Church. And it's a series of essays and stuff that is just fantastic. Sure. And that's a great book for people that are like, I love God, but I hate church. And you give them that book and it's, Yeah.
What I was looking for with Lewis, because it took me twice to be able to even understand Mere Christianity. I'm not a smart guy. And then I think
you're selling yourself short, but anyway, yeah.
I came to it late. and I have to underline everything as I read it, and it took me twice to read Orthodoxy too before I really understood.
Orthodoxy.
Once you get the case down, I'll study Orthodoxy for the rest of my life.
Yeah, I need to read it again. I gave it one read through, and I need to read it again because I'm obviously, I mean, I was impressed with it at the time, but when you hear somebody else love something, it kind of turns on a little, I'm going to go back and read it again. But Lewis, Mere Christianity, and it doesn't mean Mere Christianity like, just a little, it means the basic, what is the basics of Christianity? Mere, if you boil it down to its mere essence, what is Christianity? And it started as a series of radio broadcasts that he wrote so everybody could understand.
During World War II.
World War II.
Comfort the citizens.
Right. And then they made a book out of it. And which is why, even though they both have deep concepts in them and they're worth reading and rereading, Mere Christianity is more accessible than Orthodoxy right out the gate, in my opinion. So, and it's Yancey. Philip Yancey is the one that wrote Soul Survivor.
Oh,
so
Philip Yancey. He wrote the foreword to my first copy of Orthodoxy that I bought.
Man,
great.
Yeah, he's a really, a lot of people, because he's affiliated with Christianity Today, and a lot of people are like, well, that's loosey-goosey stuff, and I'm not going into all that. But Philip Yancey is an amazing thinker.
He is loosey-goosey, but it doesn't mean he's not full of wisdom and insight.
Right, he's full of it.
I would disagree with a lot of what he believes and says. But
right.
His book, The Disappointment with God, is a great book. I thought it was fantastic.
Well, he wrote, there's several that I've read of his. I'd have to go back and look. There was a summer where I read almost nothing but Yancey, but Soul Survivor is amazing. What it is he doesn't try to tell you how great the church is. It's a series of essays on Christians that lived a different kind of life than just going to church once on Sunday. Yeah. And it is incredibly inspiring. One of the things I can recommend out of it for you or anybody listening is he spends a whole chapter talking about Babette's Feast. Have you ever read that? Yeah. And it's just, and Babette's Feast is a different take on Christianity, right? It's very much a take on the grace, and you can be a sourpuss, or you could still be an authentic Christian and enjoy what God has made around you. Okay, man, we got to move on. We could, if you want, man, we'll do a whole podcast sometime on this stuff, because I could go all day. Yeah, I could go all day. But anyway, it's generally encouraging to hear you talk about these things, and then to know that, these people whose names I know are into all this stuff. So, okay. So getting back to the main topic at hand, one of the questions I had for you was you've had your hands involved in so much stuff. Like the average person, your Q rating, if you will, right? What does John Q know about you? They're gonna be like, I don't know that name, but then somebody's gonna say Earthworm Jim. They go, oh yeah, video games. So they're gonna think that you're the Earthworm Jim guy. But just in this conversation, you're all in these graphic novels, TV shows, video games. You're doing podcasting content, which is basically the equivalent of today's talk radio. How would you describe? Like, if somebody came up to you and said, "What do you do?" Like, how do you think of yourself as what you do?
I tell people I'm a storyteller first. It's probably my first job. Storyteller.
Good answer. So, and then you just have different mediums that you tell stories in.
Yeah. So to me, they're all different ways to kind of engage someone else's mind and take them on a ride, if you think about it that way. And I believe that we're all storytellers. So even this show is a kind of storytelling medium.
Sure.
So
our lives tell a story.
Comics is where I found the best home, because I like to draw so much that I like to really control like where the camera is and what the actors are doing with their faces and what the lighting is and the pace of the plot and the morality of the plot. So because these other mediums involve so many other people, like TV and video games, you just can't do one by yourself. But I can largely do a comic book by myself and sell it into Hollywood. And then I'm controlling more of the narrative or having more fun with pushing culture around where I want it to go.
So when you quote unquote sell things into Hollywood, are you maintaining control of your IP? And you're saying that you are a one-man IP incubator.
Yeah.
Okay.
And in fact, oftentimes they'll take my material and just completely gut it.
Yeah.
So But that's just
don't
tell it to them if you want to control it.
Right. Yeah, I hear that a lot. They're like, this would be great, but it'll work better if in this American Southwest morality tale, suddenly we have aliens. And you're like, okay, I mean, you own it. You paid me. So, yeah, the most extreme example of that I know of is, of course, Stephen King's The Lawnmower Man, which the short story has nothing to do with the movie they made. The short story is about literally a weirdo that eats grass. And then the movie, of course, was some weird virtual reality thing with Pierce Brosnan and and Stephen King was actually like, please take my name off of that. But the only reason they bought the story was so they could say Stephen King's The Lawnmower Man, and that stuff can happen, and people will take advantage of your name if they can.
It's part of my joy of creating too. Is I'm more into making the thing and I really experience deep joy, like I'm doing what I'm put here to do when I'm at my table making something.
That's fair enough.
The after product of that is presenting it to an audience, because that's its real job is what's done after it's at my table, right? Is it's intended for people to read or see, and at that point I have very little control over, say, how people take it, how people read it, how fast they read it, what a studio does with it when they buy it. And I've had to really release that control and be okay.
And you're okay.
See,
some people can't do that, but it sounds like you're at Zen with it. You're like, ooh, Earthworm Zen. See, we can write a book about, or you can write a book about being at peace through the Zen of letting things go. Earthworm Zen and you. So
getting back to Jim, Shane, that's one of the frustrations I had was here I'd done all these comics and TV shows for 20 something years, and I never got to do the exhaustive telling of my own character's story. And I finally got the book rights back early this year. And that's what made me want to do the book.
All right. That's a good place to kind of pause the discussion, but we will be back with Doug soon. So I got some quick housekeeping notes here. One, don't forget, if you're listening to the podcast version or Krypton Radio or on YouTube or one of the other ways that the show goes out after the radio broadcast, that shaneplays.com, ShanePlays.com will have show notes for today's show with links and other information, more information on Doug and how to keep up with him. We do go out as a podcast on the blog at shaneplays.com, iTunes, Google Play Music, Stitcher, Podbean, SoundCloud, YouTube, and many, many other fine venues. Shane Plays is also carried, a week delayed, on Sundays and Mondays on Krypton Radio. Krypton Radio is SciFi for your Wi-Fi, kryptonradio.com. As mentioned last week, we do have a new sponsor here on Shane Plays Geek Talk, and is no stranger to the show in general, has been on more than once. Alex from Kursova Magazine, thrilling adventure, sci-fi, pulp, adventure fantasy kind of magazine, really cool stuff. So here we're going to talk a little bit about that. Are you a fan of thrilling adventure, daring suspense, and just a touch of romance? Kursova has you covered. Since 2016, Kursova has been publishing the very best in contemporary fantasy and science fiction, retro pulp, and for you D&D gamers, Appendix N style fiction. Based in Little Rock, you can pick up their flagship magazine locally at Michael Tierney's The Comic Book Store on Treasure Hill Road, or Collector's Edition on JFK in North Little Rock. Swing by one of Michael's stores and pick up an issue, or find them on Amazon. CIRSOVA. That's CIRSOVA. Kursova Magazine. Check them out today. And speaking of Michael Tierney's comic book stores, comic book lovers, head to Michael Tierney's local comic book stores for the newest books on the shelves, plus a fantastic selection of back issues. Visit the comic book store on Treasure Hill Road in Little Rock and Collector's Edition on JFK Boulevard in North Little Rock. And don't forget to click on over to thewildstars.com. Michael Tierney knows comics. In addition to being in business for nearly 4 decades and publishing his own comic book series, The Wild Stars, for almost as long and still going, he has written multiple columns for comics magazines and is an Overstreet Price Guide advisor. Michael is also the author of the wildly successful, high-quality 4-volume labor of love, the Edgar Rice Burroughs 100-year art chronology. Remember, for all of your comic book needs with friendly service, make sure to visit the comic book store on Treasure Hill Road in Little Rock, Collector's Edition on JFK Boulevard in North Little Rock, and thewildstars.com to learn more. Tell them Shane Plays sent you. All right, we'll be back right after this break with more with Doug TenNapel talking Earthworm Jim, Bigfoot Bill, indie comics, crowdfunding comics, and lots of just cool stuff. Right here on Shane Plays Geek Talk.
Last year, Game Goblins was proud to support Extra Life and Arkansas Children's Hospital with a $5,000 donation. This year, we've committed to giving a minimum of $10,000, and we're excited to invite our customers and gaming community to help make it happen. Beginning May 1st, whenever you make a purchase at Game Goblins, we'll ask a simple question. Would you like to round up for Extra Life and Arkansas Children's Hospital? If you do, we'll round your purchase to the nearest dollar, and those pennies will go to Extra Life. In addition, Game Goblins will match every customer's donation dollar for dollar up to $5,000. Together, we can have fun, play games, and help Arkansas Children's Hospital care for children in need. We hope you'll join us.
The die is cast.
Plunge into worlds of fantastic adventure where dragons lie and the undead stalk the shades of your mind's imagines. Where creatures of legend plunder wealth through the horror of their passage. Monsters grim and foul hold the ecstasy of gold and the renown of glory. All this and more awaits you and your friends in the unlimited, fantastic world of the Castles and Crusades role-playing game from Trollord Games. Visit your friendly local game store or trollord.com to get your copy today. A rules-light, adaptable game that has stood the test of time. 12 years in constant publication with no new additions, Castles and Crusades is the original easy-to-play attribute check system. Join us and unleash your imagination. Visit your friendly local game store or trollord.com to get your copy of Castles and Crusades today.
Located in Little Rock, Mustard Seed Moving offers the most reliable and most affordable moving services in the area, with the widest variety of services, including local moves, moves across city or state lines, office moving, and home moving. They'll move your house, your apartment, your office, piano, gun safe, copy machine, tanning bed, rotting lawnmower, and more. Mustard Seed Moving's staff are highly qualified experts and professionals that have years of experience in the moving business, and every team member cares about their clients and providing them with the most excellent service available. Mustard Seed Moving knows the proper way to handle all your priceless and precious possessions, from delicate to obscure or oversized, so you can be sure your belongings are safe in their care. Contact Mustard Seed Moving 501-529-7171 to get your free quote or estimate today. Their operator is available around the clock for your convenience, so call 501-529-7171 for Mustard Seed Moving today.
Welcome back to Shane Plays Geek Talk. For those just joining, we're talking with Doug TenNapel, the creator of Earthworm Jim. Doug has some exciting news about Earthworm Jim related projects, as well as some really interesting insight on indie comic books and crowdfunding comic books and that whole scene at the moment.
We're trying to build a grassroots, ground up kind of comic fun and fandom instead of waiting for the big two to fix themselves.
Right. They're lost. They're not
waiting for a top-down solution.
Right.
We're going out and we're making our own stuff now. And this is where all the excitement is. In this indie space, there is so much movement and hope and upside. Like even Earthworm Jim and Bigfoot Bill also pulled in $200,000 on an Indiegogo.
Isn't that amazing?
What comic pull in $200,000 on a comic? Like none.
Right. And they also, they'll say stuff like, I saw a comic professional the other day said, I'm here to tell you, they're disparaging it because either A, they don't believe it, or B, they're scared or something. But they're like, you cannot put out a comic book for less than $12,000. And a few indie creators using crowdfunding, including Peter Samedi, God bless his soul, over at Alterna. Alterna raised their hands and said, I've got real world figures that disagree with that. So, but back to the big two, even if they completely found their moral and mental compass and got back to the business of serving their customers, even if they fixed everything on their end, you got the diamond distribution problem where you can only get stuff through comic book stores. Now, I love comic book stores. I'm not against them, but when comics were blowing the doors off everything, you could get it at the convenience store, you could get it at wherever, newsstands, they were everywhere. So we have the diamond problem. I guess recently, just out of the blue, all the pieces came together to allow you to do like rights wise and all. So what happened there that suddenly you can tell the story of Earthworm Jim?
It's really Earthworm Jim was kind of sitting in almost a cryogenic sleep for like 18 years. And there really hasn't been much movement on the character. I didn't control it. I didn't have a lot of say.
So you no longer owned Earthworm Jim.
Oh, yeah.
And not even one small part, because you can sell like the TV rights, but still retain the book rights or something, right? But you had no control of Earthworm Jim.
Yeah, because that was the first thing I ever made. So on the first thing, you usually get pretty burned on it. But he's opened every door since.
Yeah, I totally get it.
Begging them for the book rights, and we finally were able to work it out. It took a lot of lawyer work and a lot of negotiating back and forth for a long period of time. And it was just within a 24-hour period that suddenly all the rights came together.
It just so was it spontaneous? All of a sudden you started getting calls or hey, and then all these pieces lined up, just kind of as if by design, like somebody's hand was in it, Yeah.
I never know what God's doing because he doesn't tell me what he's doing. I just see it happen. And I go, I guess that's what he wants now. So the timing side of it is bizarre, but suddenly the game deal came through. And I was willing to work with them on the game in whatever capacity I can help. I don't have that much full time to actually work on the game because I'm doing the comic. So the rights came to me. It probably had to do with the video game for the Intellivision Amico that involved the original team that I was involved with.
Okay, so I have to drill down on that because I was going to ask. Now, is this the retro, it's preloaded with 30 and he goes, no, it's a new.
I mean, they'll have some of the retro games on there also, but this is all new development, for a new system that is based on the old Intellivision unit, but the Amico is kind of a modernized version of it. We had some quick brainstorming on the game, but the team that's actually doing it has some of the original members, and they'll be having to get to work on that, but it'll be a ways off. Like my book comes out this December, from Jim Comics. So I just kind of went off on my own path because I've had this idea for an Earthworm Jim, say movie or series in my head for quite some while. So I already had this kind of story loosely outlined, got it approved by Interplay, who is the owner of the Earthworm Jim rights.
Okay, so they own Interplay.
I just go for it. So basically, I can make as many Earthworm Jim books as I want. I intend to make a whole ton. It's like a 5-book series that I'm working on now. And these aren't scrawny little comics. I mean, my books, let me get out Bigfoot Bill.
Okay.
These are like coffee table books. My comics are 9-inch by 12-inch, hardbound. They're not available in stores.
It looks fantastic. Yeah, it almost looks like a fancy yearbook. It's
oddly enough, it's printed at the same facility that they print most of America's yearbooks is Jostens Corporation out of Clarksville.
I think I heard something about this where at the certain times of the year, if you have a correction or something, they're like, sorry, we're doing textbooks right now.
February to April, they're shut down. So if I missed my deadline on Bigfoot Bill, I would have had to have waited 3 months before I could do the printing. So I was like, cracking the whip on my colorist crew, going like, come on, go.
Go. So are you acting like you're talking about your colorist crew and whatnot. I'm guessing you're like the writer, but also acting as the producer, like bringing everything together. And
I draw, design the book, anything on the front end like that. I don't touch colors. It's like I'm not a colorist at all. So, and after you've written and drawn a book, the last thing you want to take is color.
Well, coloring is a whole art of its own.
It is.
Yeah, I often beat that drum on this show. I've had Brett R. Smith on talking about that, and I've talked with Elizabeth Breitweiser a lot and some other folks.
She's fantastic. My
She's
goodness.
really good. She's really, really good. I like it. My favorite's probably when she's doing either Mitch's or Lee Week's stuff, but she's fantastic. But she described it really well. Your colorist is kind of your cinematographer because they're using color to draw the eye and add all this stuff. So it's much more than just coloring in the lines or something like that.
It's not like a coloring book thing. It is. I see it as, and I tend to work with this one colorist. His name Catherine Garner, who's doing the Earthworm Jim book, and she's done my 5 other Scholastic books, let's say. And I have a very kind of masculine skate punk style. And she's a very feminine, meek girl from the United Kingdom. So I like having that layer underneath my art. It's a very more feminine, gentle, emotional touch. So I always tell her, you're the emotional storyteller. Like I can't write so much, but she can fill the room with atmosphere and mood. And that is kind of the final polish that goes on the book.
It's really important.
It really helps. And I really love, I have nothing but respect for colorists. I can't touch that. Don't want to touch it.
Yeah, it's a whole art of itself. And a lot of people see it as secondary, which is why I can't stand when the big two put out huge omnibus collections of comics that were originally in color and they do them in black and white, because you're missing a lot of the storytelling. But yeah, I think that a personal drum I beat, right, is the writer, the penciler, the inker, the colorist, and these days more and more the letterer should all get. I mean, they're all contributing to the total experience.
Lettering books, and on Earthworm Jim, I'm hiring a letterer. Eric Weathers is going to be doing lettering for us too.
Yeah,
and he's using my font, so it's like it's a font that I've already drawn for my comics, but he is going to. There really is an artistry to making the balloons look appealing and clear. And so they also do some of the explosion sound effects that are everyone's favorite.
Yeah, I've been paying more and more attention to the creative ways that sound effects and lettering is getting worked in. And again, it's much more than just somebody in the old days with a ruler, drawing. I mean, there's an art to that now. And a lot of times they're making up fonts and they're coming up with alien languages that you can translate and all kinds of stuff. So
nowadays, even with everyone's so savvy in reading comics, like their tastes have developed so far that now there's a lot more artistry going on, even in that medium of storytelling, where you can break the panels now, do some real untraditional stuff of drawing in the gutters, have characters, just the sequence of time and the amount of space taken up by, I've done panel-less pages where I don't have any panels and the characters are still talking to each other, just kind of fading in and out of conversations, and the audience goes right along with it. So it's a much more savvy readership now too.
There is. I mean, we're into in some ways it's good, some ways it's bad. On the craft of how you create a comic and how you use and abuse the quote unquote established rules for effect, the much higher resolution on coloring, all this stuff. You could do stuff online with layouts that you could never print, all this stuff. That's amazing. What a trend I don't like is everybody thinks that their comic book has to, even if it's like just a regular fun Spider-Man story, it has to suddenly turn into a navel gazing, this is written for adults and that bothers me, because it's, and I understand that the readership has grown a little bit, but you're not bringing in the new readers that way. And
all 18 of my books, except for one, is made for all ages. And I don't like the bloodbath stuff. I don't like the cutting. I don't like the idea that I have to hide a comic book from my 12-year-old even.
Yeah.
I'm just kind of going, what happened to comics?
Right. No, I'm with you. And like I said, if somebody wants to put out a mature comic book and there's an audience for it, that's fine. But, not every comic book has to, if you go pick up a comic from the 70s or the 80s, there's a tone and an engaging something to it that we've lost in a lot of, ways, everything. And I'm encouraged to see thought balloons coming back, because Roz, we're going to use thought balloons because that's, and it's just, anyway, that's a personal pet peeve. So I'm going to move on. Yeah.
Problem in the 90s, late 80s, early 90s, where I think comic creators started to be ashamed of their own culture and craft and going, well,
Absolutely.
bad and cool in front of these people, and this isn't for kids anymore. And I'm all for those comics that stretch out. The problem was they completely abandoned kids by the early 2000s. They pushed that market out, and you're also pushing out the next generation of readers. It's so stupid, because that is, even in movies, we call them 4-quad movies. When kids buy tickets, and teens and young adults buy tickets, married couples and old people, when they're all buying tickets, that's where the blockbusters like Pirates of the Caribbean and Star Wars come from. If you start making weirdo, fringy movies and you push the 3 of those 4 quadrants out, or even 1 of those 4 quadrants out, you're going to start losing money and destabilizing your own industry. And that's what I see. Comics now is just kind of picking up the scraps. They're trying to attract real fringy people, instead of comics that used to be for everyone first, and then there were also some odd comics on the fringes, which I think is a more healthy industry model.
I agree, and that's where I see comic book shops like serving not only the regular comic books, but also here's the direct market stuff, or here's something that's a little more mature, here's collectibles and this and that and the other. But yeah, it used to be, up until a certain age, let's call it 12. I'm just throwing a number out. Comics were as mainstream as watching a TV show. Everybody had comics. And then, they usually started most people phased them out as they got into high school and stuff like that. But people like me, and I'm assuming you and others, just kept our love of comics. I'd love to get back to that. Man, there's so much stuff we could get into. I don't want to get into your history with how you got into Earthworm Jim and made the video game and all these things, because I'm sure you've told that story many times. And maybe even have a resource that you recommend. Maybe go listen to this one podcast they captured, or whatever. But just so people don't know, I'm guessing in the 90s, late 80s, definitely in the 90s, you were involved creating a character in a video game called Earthworm Jim, and it was a platformer about basically if Flash Gordon or Buck Rogers was an earthworm. That's how I would describe it. Sure. And it was a lot of fun, very whimsical. And how many total video games were made in that franchise?
The main ones that I worked on were the first 2.
Okay.
So when I first got my job at Shiny, it was because I had created Earthworm Jim that they decided to hire me. And then these guys did the Aladdin game on Genesis. These guys were amazing game designers themselves, but they were open to taking in a new character. And so I created this character over the weekend, right before my interview. I brought it in, and they went for it. Now, and that is rare in and of itself. That's another weird God thing where you go like, how often does that even happen?
Right. It doesn't. Yeah.
They worked for Playmates Toys. Like, they could have made any of Playmates characters, and they said, we're going to do an original. And I brought in Earthworm Jim. They went for it. It happened to be the right place at the right time, where this team had built an amazing game engine. They'd been doing video games for 10 years. Many of these guys were from the UK. I happened to have a guru of an animator named Mike Dietz, and another best friend of mine and a brother, Ed Schofield, who just came out of Art Center. And us 3, we hit the ground running on animation. We were just diving into Chuck Jones and Warner Brothers cartoons.
You definitely see that Chuck Jones, Warner Brothers influence. Yeah, absolutely.
So even that just wasn't in games. Like, no one could do it, and no one even tried. And we were the first to do it. And lo and behold, like, the American audience was just starving for this thing. The game ends up getting Game of the Year.
Right.
Blows up on all of the game magazines. It becomes a cartoon and a toy line,
right? Which
is my dream, right? As a pop media, I'm just like, I can check that off my bucket list,
right? So you've got resume bullets for life off that, yeah.
I got the pitch to J.J. Abrams. Sam Raimi reads my work. I met Steven Spielberg, who funded my next company, The Neverhoods. I'm just saying, it opened so many doors for me in production. And most artists out there know, if you're just trying to make something, you're like, how do I get anyone to see this?
Yep.
So it was a weird golden BB at the right time. I was like 27 years old in 93 when I came up with them. And ever since, it's not like it doesn't make the art job easy. It makes it easier, because there's still lots of stuff I make, and no one's like, it's not like people are going, well, I'll buy that thing I don't like because you made Earthworm Jim.
Right.
And I make lots of things, frankly, that I think are better, and no one has any interest in it.
Well,
So
you get Earthworm Jim has it's broken through the background noise of pop culture, and for example, Stephen King, who became a walking franchise based on his name, when he did the Richard, I never know if it's the Bateman or Bachman books or Bachman, but he wrote 4 books under the pseudonym Richard Bachman. They sold, but not well. Same writing, same author, whatever. And as soon as he came out of the closet or was outed, somebody outed him. They did their research and made the connections, it called him and said, I'm going to out you as Richard Bachman. But anyway, the whole point is it became public. And as soon as they put Stephen King on, they sold like hotcakes. So the point is, it's not always the quality of your work. It's a perfect storm of many things coming together.
It's not fair. Like, business and art isn't often fair. And so I see lots of artists who are more talented that don't get heat. I see myself being more talented than a lot of artists that do get heat. And it's just kind of, you're not going to make the world be fair.
Yeah, whether you're a creator or not, that's one of the most profound things you can learn in life. Life isn't fair, and you can't make it be fair. And as soon as you accept that and just say, I'm going to do my best, I'm going to move on, and I'm not going to try to suck the ocean through a straw, you'll have a lot more peace in life.
And especially the internet isn't fair. Like, you can't fix Twitter, so quit trying.
Right.
You're woke with amazing tweets. It's like, you can't fix it. It is, it's often ugly and weird, and sometimes this is very Chestertonian. Sometimes just making a happy home in your own backyard and being comfortable in your own skin.
That's all you can do.
Is a blast and a joy in and of itself.
Yeah, my pet theory is that social media and Twitter aren't broken. They're just revealing human nature. That's my pet theory. We don't live in a world, we don't live in a good world where bad things happen. We live in a bad world where, through the grace of God, good things are allowed to happen.
Twitter holds an ugly, a mirror, and we ugly.
Yeah. And if you find your self-worth in God, then man, all that stuff just bounces off, So anyway, so you got involved with Earthworm Jim. You created this product that, or this IP, this character that, was a multimedia, multi-platform, no pun intended. Character. You were involved in the first 2 games. And then you've gone on to have a really amazing career that a lot of people probably don't know about. Now, through a series of whatever people want to call it, fate, God, I would say God, it all suddenly came back together to where you could Indiegogo these Earthworm Jim comic books. And there's a video game involved coming out for the new Intellivision console. So what is it that you would definitely want people to know about your Indiegogo for Earthworm Jim?
The biggest thing I want people to know about is just, this is a crowdfunding campaign. That means it needs a crowd. Mm-hmm. And the crowd does all of your marketing. So they can copy and paste the link to the campaign and tell their friends about it. Everyone knows someone around who was once an Earthworm Jim fan way back in the day. And those are the people that I like to say, first of all, I want you to come into the campaign and get a book. My last book, Bigfoot Bill, the day it dropped, went for 3 to 4 times the amount that people paid for it on eBay because it's not in store.
Real quick, what is Bigfoot Bill?
Bigfoot Bill is a unique character I created a while ago, and I was looking for a great medium to put it in, and I decided to do it in an Indiegogo comic. So it's a 98-page book or a 96-page book about a Bigfoot who is trying to escape a prison for cryptozoological monsters like Loch Ness.
Who's put him in prison? Is there like an X-Files type of organization or something?
Is, okay. In LA, it's a big top government thing. It goes back to the founding of America. It's like it is a kind of a big secret conspiracy thing. Bigfoot Bill finds out he steals the finger of Poseidon, which gives him mastery over the Kraken, and he wears the Kraken as a costume.
It's totally crack-a-lackin', isn't it?
Crack-a-lacka. Good.
Crack-a-lacka
And he
with
has
the Kraken.
interdimensional powers, and he ends up escaping this facility on the streets of LA, and he finds out that he has family members. He was told he was the last Bigfoot. He believes he has family members out there. So that's the beginning of his quest.
So that's why, because he has the finger of Poseidon and he gets the Kraken. So he gets Kraken with the finger of Poseidon. That's why the cover of the premium edition, he's got tentacles coming off of him.
Yeah, he's got tentacles hanging off his back. He's got electricity coming out of his arm, and the Kraken is like his armor. It's like it's indestructible.
So I have to. Go ahead. I see that. You see the eyes in the mouth of the Kraken.
Yeah, and it talks to him, and it's like this old wise soul, and Bigfoot's like a stupid teenage Bigfoot.
This is great. So it's a buddy cop.
Oh yeah. It's a comedy, action, sci-fi comedy.
Okay,
and very much in the Chestertonian world of fairy tale.
Okay, is it still available for? I know in Indiegogo sometimes they leave sort of a store up. Can I go buy it right now or?
You cannot. And that's the thing is it's like I make them. That's where the value comes from. Is they're unavailable. So this thing will be.
Well,
available
I'm going to eBay
again.
right now.
Bigfoot Bill 2 will launch beginning of next year. I'll open the store back up. I'll reoffer Bigfoot Bill 1.
Oh, you will reoffer it when Bigfoot Bill 2?
It'll be reoffered only when I open my Indiegogo store.
Okay. All right. Bigfoot Bill.
Now, because that one will be closed down
All right.
when it's done. And
well, let me ask you this. If for the one with the premium cover that looks like a textbook, what were people buying that for on the Indiegogo?
They were paying $25. Same thing with Earthworm Jim. It's a $25 book.
Okay, I'm on eBay. It's anywhere from $150 to $350. So guess what I'm doing? Yeah, I'm waiting for that Bigfoot Bill too. But I'm getting it. That's too bonkers, man.
And Earthworm Jim should be doing the same. I'm not going to sell it in stores. I never do a digital download of it. The book is the art form that I intend. And I protect that, and then my backers can do what they want with it.
And you know what? And this is subjective, okay? There is no one right way to do this. I am not throwing shade or whatever the hip term is. Once you get past 40 or 30, you don't care if you're hip anymore, right? You don't care if you can hang with the kiddos.
I'm 52, and there's nothing worse than a guy who's 52 years old trying to look hip,
trying to get down with the youngins at the sock hop. So you know what's funny? My birthday's coming up pretty soon. People ask me, I literally can't remember my exact year. I'm like 47, 48, something like that. So, did you ever run into that where you just like, you weren't sure of the exact year anymore, but you knew kind of.
I have no idea where I even am those days.
Which is one of my favorite G.K. Chesterton stories where he ended up in like Edinburgh or something. Yeah. He wasn't supposed to be there. So he sent a telegram to his wife, which is the equivalent of texting. Yeah. He says, I'm here. Where ought I be? Right?
Where ought I be?
Yeah.
He didn't know where he was. He sends her a telegraph to find out where he is and where he's supposed to be.
He's such a character, and evidently he would just dominate debates with panache and style and wit.
He was on a professional tour with George Bernard Shaw, who was an atheist and a socialist, and Chesterton was.
And they would debate each other, right?
And they were best friends.
I love that.
More than anything, and you couldn't find two bigger opposites. That is a huge lesson for us today, too.
It's the biggest, and as long as we're talking about that, one of the reasons that I do Shane Plays Geek Talk is because being a geek is universal. It don't matter what your politics, you can love geek stuff, and I have friends that we've become diametrically opposed. For me anyway, and a lot of my friends, the older we got, the more political we got. When we were in our 20s, we're all basically socialist libertarians or something, just whatever, I don't care. And at least I was very reprobate in my 20s and I didn't care. The point I was making was I have friends that I've become diametrically opposed to politically, but our love of geek stuff brings us together. And I was an elected official for 2 terms as basically a county commissioner here in Arkansas to Justice of the Peace. I was the first Republican in that seat in the history of the district. I caught that red wave that rose 2009, 2010, got reelected. And when you're in office and you're fighting political fights, it infects your whole life and everything turns into a war and you lose discernment. So when I got out of elected office, I'm still an activist, but I was like, I got to decompress. Right. So I was like, what's something I love? So I got into my geeky stuff. And another reason I do my geeky stuff is because I tell my Republican friends this, I tell my Democrat friends this, I tell everybody this. It doesn't matter if you're right on any one particular issue if we tear apart at the seams.
Right.
Keeping us together is more important than most individual issues. So don't cut people off. Don't throw them out of your life. Relationships at the end of the day are more important than politics. But then you have to weave in that narrow path that there are some non-negotiables. Okay.
Well, and in mass media, why cut half of your audience off? This is mass media, butts in the seat. Who do you want to buy your book and see your movie? Why not everyone? So why put material in it that's going to make half the people hate you instead of unite everyone laughing and reading a comic? Because
they're not in business for the business they say they're in. They're in business for ideological warfare and cultural conditioning. Right.
That's what bugs me. It's social engineering, and that is not
social engineering, dude. Social engineering. I talk a lot about the difference between social commentary and social engineering, and that's a lot of what's happening in comics the past few years. People are like, we've always had social commentary. Yeah, but this is social engineering, man. This is you taking established characters and suddenly drastically changing them to get some sort of ideological point acceptable.
If I bring up faith in my comics, I make sure that I bring up the toughest arguments against my position, like the problem of evil.
Right.
Because everyone's interested in that, including people of faith, as opposed to going for easy kills against the other side.
I'm not a fan, and it doesn't sound like you are either. I would rather lose on a well thought out argument than win on a straw man, because that straw man's doing further damage down the road. But yeah, it's Marvel Comics got to the point where Axel Alonso just admitted that, he's like, we're saving comics. It's always been a hobby for old white men and all. I'm like, what? So, okay. Anyway, so we talked Bigfoot Bill. I'm getting a copy. That's happening. When do you think that Bigfoot Bill 2 Indiegogo will?
January 2020. But Earthworm Jim is open now.
Okay. So let's get back to the particulars of the Earthworm Jim Indiegogo. For the particulars, if I come to this Indiegogo, pitch me as two different people. Say that we're supporting the parallel reality theory, and you're going to talk to two different Shanes. The first Shane you're going to talk to is familiar with Earthworm Jim. Sure. What am I going to see in here that you particularly want me to know about this Indiegogo?
Sure. To the fan of Earthworm Jim, this is the book for the super fan. It's if you've played the game and you've watched the cartoon, maybe you have the toy, you've been doing all that stuff and you never knew his actual story because this story could not fit on a little cartridge. So I'm here to kind of fill that gap of knowledge of why does this suit exist? Where did it come from? How did Jim come to be? Who is the queen who's declaring war on the earth? What's his relationship with Princess What's-Her-Name? How did he get Peter Puppy the dog? All those questions are answered for the fan. So I'm filling in the holes of this missing hole in the universe, this Earthworm Jim-shaped hole in the universe. To the person who's never heard of Earthworm Jim, that's where I'll go back on my credentials and say that I'm a award-winning, Eisner Award-winning, Emmy-nominated graphic novel artist. I've done 18 books. I've got Junior Library Guild awards. I am a favorite among librarians and people use my books in literacy programs around the world. Pretty high in vocabulary in my work. And I just think overall my goal is to entertain as many people as I can, make them laugh, challenge them and give them, bring them on a rip-roaring adventure. So if you're into that, then you're going to love Earthworm Jim.
Okay. So, how many days? Was this a 60-day Indiegogo?
Okay. 60. And that was another weird choice that I made. It's based on wanting to be as honest to my backers as possible. And that's just, if I know I'm intending to leave it open for 60 days, why say I'm going to leave it open for 30 and keep extending it? So I went for the 60 days. Then the store opens up It goes into a store mode that stays open until I pull the trigger on the print run,
and then it's done
in October. And then I close it, and you can't get it until I open the Bigfoot Bill campaign, where I might offer some of my extra printings of Earthworm Jim.
Okay, so that kind of leads back into something we touched on a while ago. Again, this is subjective. There's no right or wrong way to do it.
Sure.
But I support your approach, and let me tell you why. When you make it, so once the print run starts, you can't get it anymore. Right. You're truly telling your crowd backers that they're special and thank you. And so you're going that extra mile to say, no, really, if it hadn't been for you, this wouldn't have happened. And I respect that. Now, there are other people that, and these are friends, they're people I admire, that I respect them.
Mine too.
Yeah, I'm not, it's subjective. There's no right or wrong way, but they'll come out and say, hey, it's for 30 days, da, da, da. Then they'll extend it, or they'll leave a store up. And again, there's nothing wrong with that, because you could argue that, like, there's people that heard afterwards that want to support or whatever, or, you know, they didn't have, there's times where I'm like, I want to support that, but I got to wait till payday. I'm a single income, there's dual income, no kids dinks. I'm a single income wife and kid. So I'm a sing whack.
I'm a single income wife and 4 kids.
Yeah. You know, so you know what it's like, you know, and so now they're getting older. So now when you see your sons go to the refrigerator, you're hearing cha-ching, cha-ching, cha-ching. So yeah. And so there's times I literally have to wait, and I've actually had to back stuff and then cancel it, because I was like, this is going to hit before payday. And I've had to send the people a message and say, I am so sorry. I didn't cancel it because I've got a budget. And then they're like, no problem. We're going to put up a store. So I'm not against it.
It's also very normal for people to come in,
right,
and then go out, like buyer's remorse. That's fine. They come and go all they want. I'm only saying for my people, come in,
right,
because I don't want you to go without this book.
Sure.
And there's people who my goal was for every Bigfoot Bill backer who did not back it to deeply regret.
Can you say that 3 times fast? Every Bigfoot Bill packer that didn't back it?
I've said that
Bigfoot
so many times over the last year. And that's the other thing about why people do say they're going to leave the store open at 30 days and extend it to 60 days, whatever it is. In this business model, there's no marketing dollars, zero. So anything that creates a little heat or people talking about it, or gives you a reason to reach out to people is fair game. So I'm just saying it's fair. It's just not what I wanted to do with this book.
And yeah, again, but I do respect it. But I know of an instance of some people that are trying to do extremely cool things in comics. And while they're lining up investors, all the investor money isn't in yet. So they're trying to do Indiegogo's, 1, to get product out, but 2, to raise money for the further. Yeah. So there's, again, no right or wrong.
Patronage. Yeah. It is a really neat space in the art, in the work of art of comics right now, because it's not, people aren't going to a store where they never meet the guy. We all put on shows. We all have YouTube shows. We all have YouTube channels. We talk to our backers.
Doesn't it blow you away that people tune into this YouTube stuff? I don't know how many people come up to me and like, I saw Mitch on, or I saw Doug. People watch that stuff like they used to watch TV. I mean, it's real. It's not just some.
I have a YouTube channel. Look up Doug TenNapel on YouTube. I have about 11,000 subscribers.
All right, I'm going to subscribe right now, and I'm going to add that to the show notes. Yeah. So are you going to, I know you have some reward levels in here, which I want to go through here in a second, because I think a lot of times when people are like, hey, I have an Indiegogo or I have a Kickstarter, but then they don't mention some of the reward levels that might hook people in for time reasons or whatever. Yeah. So I want to give you a chance to do that. But I also want to ask, are you going to add a stretch goal so that if you, go across a certain level, that you'll dress up like a worm and introduce yourself to that person as a creeping or burrowing invertebrate animal with long, slender, soft body and no limbs?
I considered it, but decided against it.
Just for time reasons, right?
Another thing about the campaigns is you have to figure out a stretch goal that is, and I'm still figuring it out. I want to do a patch or something like that for everybody. But the first 3 really to me, the most important one is always just the basic book. It's a $25 book, and you'll pay.
If you can't do your crowdfunding based on your basic product, then you don't have a good product. I don't know how to put it.
What I'm most excited about. It's what I'm putting the most time into. Is that book is what I'm doing full time between now and September, round the clock, and then the next one up from that is the book and the making of the Earthworm Jim comic book, which is
I wanted to give you a chance to talk about that. And that has a different cover. I like both covers, but I think I like the cover to the making of even better. I like that he's on the
artist who did all of the cartridge art. He's a way better illustrator than I am. So I put him on the making of, and that's Mike Kelsch, who did, he did all of our promo art in Earthworm Jim back in the early 90s. And so that is to me the tier to get. Right. That's $50. 2 hardbound coffee table style books. And that making of book is really made for the Earthworm Jim fan who wants to do a deep dive on the history of the character. It also has my note cards that I wrote for the script for this book, script pages. I'll do scans of penciled pages, inked pages, and go into my theory. It'll have character bios and interviews with the original team. So there's a lot of meat in that book. And that book starts at 64 pages. Yeah. And those will be stretch goals where we'll be increasing page count. So it'll go up by 16-page increments pretty soon. I'm going to try and get it, I think, closer to a 90-something page book if I can pull that off.
I love it. And I'm looking at some of the finished colored stuff, and it's just, even the coloring adds a depth of field to this. Like we're underfund the team, and it's got Earthworm Jim and Princess What's Her Name on his bike. Almost looks like a jet engine that he flies around.
Yeah, on. It is. Yeah, basically a stolen engine that he's hot wired.
Yeah, but the coloring, they're up in the air, and the coloring has a depth of field of depth to it. Like you can see, they're up in the air in the coloring, and then you were talking about, like, part of the jet engine is over the next panel. Looks fantastic. Coloring's great. Art's great. I actually, talking about the covers, I like your art style better. It has a zippy energy to it that, but what I like about the cover to the Earthworm Jim making of book, I love the composition of him blasting off, and he's got that little look, that look in his eyes, like, so. Yeah, he's got grit. That's the word. So did you come up, and I'm sure you've been asked this before, I've heard, like, the Wallace and Gromit stuff, right? Yeah. I've heard more than once that the eyebrows on Gromit, the dog, are so important to show his personality and how he's feeling. So I'm assuming that the little bit of worm coming off Earthworm Jim's head that's kind of acts like hair. I'm assuming you use that a lot to show expression or add to. Was that your idea, or original idea? Okay,
that's an animator trick. It's called it's almost like a flag that hangs off his head. So if you draw a panel of a character looking to the right, and that tail is dragging off and following behind, it actually shows the motion better. When you have something like ears or a hat or hair that hangs off, you can use that in your storytelling to show action. And it works as expression, of course, if he's like scared and goes straight up.
Right, exactly. Yeah, it's almost like a little exclamation point.
Everything is you can use and exploit anything for acting to help show that there's a soul rolling around in that character, and he's really occupying that space.
I love this. There you've got, under the art of bookmaking, he's the suit is taking over, grabbing him by the head, pulling him out, and using him like a whip to swing. Yeah. So, okay. I want to highlight another stretch goal. You had mentioned before we started recording, I can see it behind you, you did some nose art for a plane. What kind of plane is that for?
That's a KC-135.
Yep.
They use to refuel the planes in the air. Anytime we're in theater,
right?
KC-135 out, pumping gas in the air into all of our aircraft to keep them out in the field. And so I got an opportunity. This plane, basically the Air Force that's in charge of it, they were Earthworm Jim fans, and the captain gets to pick who does the nose art. And he was a huge Earthworm Jim fan. He got a hold of me through a guy I went to high school with, and they had me do the nose art, and that's Old Granddad. Beale Air Force Base. That is going in theater.
Yeah. So that will be on the nose of a KC-135.
That's right.
And it's Uncle Sam holding up the Earth like Atlas, and it says "Old Granddad." So it's talking about that those refuelers basically are carrying the weight of the world in a certain way.
And they have an old saying that says, "No one kicks ass without our gas."
I was in the Air Force for 9 years, and the C-130, which is now the I think it's the 130J. They've changed the props and stuff. Is a backbone of military and NGO, relief organization. Yeah.
When I went to the base, we commissioned it last week. I got to pull the curtain off, and the wing commander, I
gave
got
you
my
a coin. Nice.
From all the top brass. They came out. We had a big ceremony. It was an absolute. I was choking up because I don't like having our servicemen applaud me.
Right. Exactly. Right. Yeah.
Unworthy. So we put together a tier on Earthworm Jim where I'm sending 800 copies of the Earthworm Jim comic to Beale Air Force Base. That's one for every service member on that base is getting Earthworm Jim for Christmas, and I want my backers to help me out with that. I'm gonna move the books out there no matter what, but it's a tier where if you buy, I think it's for $250 or $240, you're buying 10 books that will be sent out there, and then you'll get as a gift from me a signed copy of Earthworm Jim.
And it looks like people have already sent 90 books. Yeah. So that's fantastic. Yeah.
I'm doing it. I just want the backers to come in on the joy, but if you're not there, I'm doing it anyways, but I'd love to have you guys participate. All my patriots out there, let's give them a great Christmas gift. I'm going to be torn up getting to give them that because it is. Thank you. And they're very close to my heart. When I went to that base, I'm telling you, man, I just was bonded.
Really? Yeah.
And by the way, the captain of that plane, the guy who actually is in charge of that entire plane is 22 years old.
Wow.
One of the most people.
Yeah.
By the way, the whole base is a bunch of 22-year-olds.
Oh, yeah. No, I mean, the military is a young organization. Most people, unless you're a high-ranking officer, most people retire out of the military between their 30s and 40s. So, you come out at 18.
Button down. We're in good hands, everybody. We're in good.
That's fantastic. Okay, and then you've got a reward level where people can get original inked Earthworm Jim page. And then there's an original cover, alternate cover, and then a Mike, is it Kolsch? I don't want to, making of cover. And those last 2 or 3 stretch goals are for the true collector fan, that has some disposable income. So, but they're out there. Yeah, they're out there. So
here's that page that you were mentioning though, with the color work, this is the black and white original ink.
Right.
And I actually do ink washes on these books.
I see that. Yeah. That looks fantastic.
Really collectible and really beautiful. The original pages, I'm really proud of them.
Those are great. Yeah. I'm definitely supporting this. I have it on my, I clicked the heart to follow it. And you got 49 days left. You originally, we're recording this on May 25th. This should air, if all goes according to plan, on June 8th. Because I'll be in Texas at a game convention, and you've raised $192,868 on an initial goal of $12,000, which is just spectacular. Congratulations to you. So that's definitely going well. Doug, that's everything I had. Go ahead.
When an independent thing works, because so many times you start a business, you try something, it fails. This one worked. Yeah, it is working very well. I'm very happy.
Well, I love these crowdfunding campaigns. One, because it helps people like you get your stuff out there, and you get to directly take care of your customers, right? Yeah. Which is fantastic. There's obviously a demand in the market for this. It also shows not just the big two, but the quote unquote mainstream comic publishers out there. It can't be helping but grabbing their attention. Like, what are they doing that people like that we're not? And, you could argue for the first year or two, a lot of it was anger against the big two. But I think we're a little bit past that phase. I mean, there's still some of that mixed in. Yeah.
I'm not at war with an industry.
Right.
And really the reason why I'm reaching out to the Answer audience is I like having families in my audience. I like having my brothers and sisters in the Lord in the audience. I would like to get more of that in my audience because, frankly, most of my audience are secular. They're progressive. I work a lot in Hollywood and in kind of that world that I'm looking for.
Its own little world out there, isn't it? That's putting it mildly. Yeah. All right. Well, Doug, this has been an absolute pleasure. These I love everybody I interview. I love all my shows, but sometimes they're extra special for just stuff that comes up I absolutely wasn't expecting, and I've really, really enjoyed this. You're always welcome back on the show. Stay in touch. Whether you just want to hang out and chat or whether you have something to promote. All right. Well, Doug, I'm definitely going to support Earthworm Jim. I'm definitely going to support Bigfoot Bill 2, so I can get the first one and the second one. When the video game gets closer, if the people that are doing the video game want to help promote it, I'd be happy to have them on. It'll
be way longer than a year, though.
Right, it takes a long time. Yeah. Okay. Well, Doug, thanks so much again. Man, I wish you nothing but success, even on top of the success you've already achieved just in the first 11 days of your campaign, which is just absolutely remarkable. So,
well, thanks for having me on, Shane. This is the key to the crowdfunding thing is I need an audience, and I appreciate anyone who gives me an audience, but you've been a gracious host, and obviously we're kindred spirits.
Definitely. Yeah.
Literature and games and movies.
Yeah, I love meeting a brother that is involved in the geeky arts.
Despite his great big muscles and his really big ray gun, Jim is still an earthworm, but then he's the only one with a super suit to make him really super strong. Jim can be a winner if we only sing along. Earthworm Jim.
We think he's mighty fine.
Earthworm Jim.
A hero for all time.
Earthworm Jim. Hooray for Jim.
Ja spojkasz Jim.
Groovy.
Shane Plays Radio is blessed to have sponsors, and we appreciate them very much. However, did you know that you can also support the show as an individual for as little as $1 an episode? Simply go to patreon.com/ShanePlays.